to be here with everybody. I love being here at First Presbyterian Church, so thank you for having me today. I'm the site coordinator with Communities in Schools. Can everybody hear me well? Okay, great. I'm the site coordinator with Communities in Schools at Henry L. Marsh III Elementary School. So when I was originally asked to do this, I was asked to speak to the challenges that our families face. And though I will be speaking about the challenges, I want this to be a space of understanding and also talking about the culture and community and care of our community, because the challenges that they face are just a small portion of their stories as well. So keeping that in mind as we're talking about this. Also, throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. I just ask that you wait until the slide is over and then you can ask me, because the way my brain works these days, if I'm stopped mid-thought, I will forget what I'm talking about. So after the slide is over, you can ask me all the questions you want to, and then we'll move on to the next. Sound good? All right. So Communities in Schools, we were founded by Bill Milliken. This is not me. This is Bill Milliken. This is actually recent. So Nzinga Williams was one of my co-site coordinators. So during the pandemic, we got some CARES funding that allotted to site coordinators to be at certain sites. So some of you who volunteer have been at Henry Marsh for a while know Cameron Korb came before, and then Precious Wadi after that, and then Nzinga Williams. So about 2 weeks ago, Nzinga ran into Bill Milliken randomly at the train station. No security or anything. He was just going wherever he was going. And so that was a picture from then. So we were founded by Bill Milliken right there, and we operate off of the premise that students should be surrounded with a community and support to help them achieve not only in school, but achieve in life as well. And we operate off of the 5 basics. So a one-on-one relationship with a caring adult, a safe place to learn and grow, a healthy start and a healthy future, a marketable skill to use upon graduation, and a chance to give back to peers and community. So every year we do an annual needs assessment, and that's students, staff, and parents. And then from that needs assessment, we coordinate our supports for the following year. And we use the 5 basics to do that. So for example, our Reading Buddies program, mentorship and connection with one-on-one adults was something that was voiced in the needs assessment. And so going back to our 5 basics, a one-on-one relationship with a caring adult, even though we have Reading Buddies and the premise of it is to increase the literacy, the kids just see that somebody's coming to have a one-on-one connection with them. So I have a kid every single time he sees me, before he even says good morning, he's like, where's my reading buddy? Is my reading buddy coming today? He's not necessarily worried about the content, even though it's helping him. He's worried about that person. Are they going to come back, and are they going to continue that one-on-one connection with them? So when we're doing the annual needs assessment, we go back to our 5 basics and we see if we try to stick to our 5 basics. Throughout the year, we do data to see if what we're doing is actually working or the impact that it's making. And that's kind of how the CIS model works. Any questions about that specifically? Nope. Okie doke. All right, so what does the site coordinator do? So I know some of you are already in the schools and you're very familiar, but some of you aren't that familiar with CIS or what we do in the schools. So we serve as a bridge between community partners, faith groups, nonprofit agencies to mobilize the resources needed for the school. And so Bill Milliken, very famous quote, it's relationships, not programs, that change children. So again, our Reading Buddy program, our Lunch Buddy program, connecting with the kids and building those relationships. It's not necessarily the program itself, it's what the kid is getting out of it. And so we work with a minimum of 50 students. Within those 50 students, we work directly with each of them, doing check-ins, and then we coordinate support. So we have like challenge discoveries, going back to the Reading Buddy program. We have a lot of programming that we filter specifically to those 50 students. And then small group facilitation, so mindfulness, middle school transition. We just did a trip to MLK with our 5th graders. We do that every year. Collaborating with the attendance team, the mental health support team, parents, teacher, and staff, communities in school. So getting everybody together. And then connecting students and families to resources, so housing, mental health resources. And then engaging community partners like you all. So volunteer placements, so mentors, classroom assistants, reading buddies, point of contact for most donations and resources, collaboration with community partners to provide the tiered support. So we operate off of tiers. So tier 1 are school-wide events. So some of you came to our trunk or treat events. Tier 2, that's groups, so like challenge discovery, the social emotional learning group. And then tier 3 is our one-on-one, so like our attendance trackers and whatever one-on-one support with students. And then developing and sustaining relationships with our partners and making sure that it's a mutually beneficial, that it is mutually beneficial between the partners and the schools. Any questions? I know I threw a lot at you. Yes. Oh yes, definitely. So everybody's gonna be getting the slides. I have some pictures in here of Henry Marsh students, so I'm gonna pull those out. But you're gonna have all of this on there. Great question. Yes, minimum of 50. So sometimes we have more. Prayer. No. So no. So do you mean the 50 case managed students or tier one, the entire school?
Well, it's tier one, I know it's tier one.
Yes.
So, but I'm sure there's more than 50 students that need your assistance.
Yes. So on a tier one perspective, so the case management is tier two and tier three. Those are the ones that we're working directly with. Then all the other students, we try to coordinate some other support. So say it's a student who needs some basic needs support. And I'll get to that too. We have our community closet. So if you're somebody who doesn't have access to shoes and you need shoes, we have that. If you're somebody who needs access to mental health support, I might send a list of resources to the parent. So we're helping other students in other ways depending on what they need and coordinating other resources or connecting them to other resources. And then our 50 students are the ones that we're intensively supporting. So they're in several support. We're checking in with them consistently. And they're just a more like centralized focus. Does that make sense?
So it's something that I guess when I'm saying the way that Henry Marsh, if you have two of you there, it's really different.
Yeah, so whenever there was two of us, again, we have to have a minimum of 50 kids on our caseload, and so we were able to serve at least 100 students between the two of us. And it's very challenging, I guess you can imagine. And so again, when we're looking at our caseload and taking on kids, we're very strategic with not having all high intensity students. So my background is in therapeutic day treatment, which is a behavioral support. So I'm naturally inclined to take all the kids that nobody necessarily wants to deal with. But realistically, having 50 students who are high intensity and need that much support, we have to level it out. So it might be like 15 to 20 students that I'm consistently checking in with every single day, and the rest are in other support. So like their reading buddy support, there's challenge discovery support, whatever other support, connecting them with child savers, making sure that they're participating in their groups. And so whatever supports that they have, just making sure that they're compliant with it and they're getting what they need out of it. We're up to like 570 right now, and I'm going to get into that as well. Our population opposed to the other population as well. Yes, ma'am. To be a case managed student? Great question. So it's just based on need. So I have a student who comes to school every day, but they just need basic needs and one-on-one check-in. Then I have a student who needs basic needs. They need one-on-one check-ins. They need connections to mental health support. The family needs case management. It really just depends. So what I look at is, what does the student need, and do I have the capacity to support them? If I don't have the capacity to support them, then I'm going to outsource their support. Does that make sense? No, so I'm in elementary school, and so anybody K through 5, I'm taking. Yeah. Yes, yes, yes. And so right, and so we have students. Right, so we have students who are out of scope of CIS, right? So if this is a student who's missed 50 days or so, what's the situation? Is it a lack of transportation? Is it a lack of parental engagement? What exactly is causing them to miss school, or what exactly do they need? And again, sometimes in the beginning of the year, I have the capacity for all of that. But as the year progresses and I'm gaining more students, then it's time to look at what can I support the student with, and then what needs to be outsourced from there. Yeah. I love the questions. Yes. 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 And it could be a community support as well. So a student might need some more mental health support, and that's not something that I'm necessarily doing. So I might refer them to child savers or our RVHA clinician. And if they have the capacity for it in-house, which we love something in-house so that transportation isn't a barrier, if we're unable to support it in-house, then do it something that's outside of school as well. And so usually we'll give the parents a list of resources, or like communicating with them about their insurance, what they have the capacity to take on in terms of affordability, and then outsourcing can be in-house, or it can be literally out in the community. Yeah.
But depending on the topic, what we get to.
Oh yeah.
We have Robert Golan.
Okay.
And others on the school together.
Great. That's amazing. We love Child Savers. We collaborate very closely together. They're amazing. And I heard you all had them here as well for some training too.
The child that's into it at an early grade, do they stay in this program for their
Great question. Not all the time. So what may happen is, so example in kindergarten, if we have a kindergartner who's in the Reading Buddies program, we like to continue them for several reasons, because they've already been identified as needing support, but also we want them to continue with the person that they've made a connection with. Because what oftentimes happens is these children have a lot of people coming in and out of their lives, and so we want to continue that connection with their reading buddy or whoever they have with them. It goes again each year. Some kids roll over, and then some of them I'm looking again. Do I have the capacities and supports this year to be able to support this child? If I do, then I keep them. If I don't, then again, I'm outsourcing. Or I'm seeing what I can still be a part of, and then I'm collaborating with other agencies as well to still supplement that support. Thank you for asking that. Any other questions? We sure? I love the engagement. All right, so here's some things that we currently offer. So Big Brothers Big Sisters is one of our big partners. So we have about 4 bigs. The reason that we don't have more is because, number one, they're finding a very challenging time getting bigs, and also bigs that are reflective of our demographic as well. And so we partner very well with them, and the kids are loving their buddies, but we wish that we had some more bigs or Big Brother, Big Sister, but that program is going very well. We see Tassie in the middle. Can I give a quick shout out to Tassie Madden for coming in and organizing this pantry? Because anybody who knows me, I'm very organized online, but if you see me in real time, in real space, I'm not organized. It's very like organized chaos. And so there was stuff everywhere, and the pantry looked wild. And then Tassie just came in and she was like, I'm going to come and organize this. So it works for me whenever volunteers and partners come in. They're like, I see you have a lot going on. I'm just going to take this for you and do it. And you do an amazing job just organizing. So thank you so much. And so to the left, you can see Miss Neely Barnhart with a student that she had a few years ago. And then we did a teacher. I always do like a scavenger hunt for the teachers and staff. So that's not a specific CIS support to do things for the teachers and staff, but we collaborate with them, and they have such a huge role in the school, so we want to support them. And so that was the CIS t-shirt that we ended up giving, and she was super excited about the scavenger hunt. Reading buddies. So most of our reading buddies are from First Presbyterian, so shout out to you all and hand clap to you all. Thank you so much. Give yourselves a hand clap, even though some people aren't volunteering here, but you are supporting in other ways. I do want to be clear that reading buddies are not tutors, as you're not following a curriculum. So some of you are educators, but you're not necessarily following a curriculum when you are a reading buddy. And also, whenever you are a reading buddy, you're not reading to the student. So it's just a support where you're like engaging them in literacy games and activities to increase their literacy skills, but also the point is to connect with that student as well. But I want to clarify that because sometimes volunteers think they're reading to the students, and reading buddies is different than classroom reader. Classroom readers come in and read to the classroom or in small groups. Lunch buddies, so this is almost like a mentorship. So you're having lunch with the student and then playing games with them, just getting to know them. We have some lunch buddies right now who aren't just working with one student, but they have several students as well. Classroom assistants. So this one, I connect the volunteer directly with the teacher or staff member. So it's not just for teachers. We have a art teacher who has a classroom assistant through FTC as well. And they just help out with whatever the classroom teacher needs, doing small groups with the children. Shout out to Pastor Blair as well for that. And so whatever the needs are in the classroom, they're just assisting with that. Attendance Hero, so that's here every day, ready to learn on time. I have a lot of my kids doing attendance trackers, and they win prizes. So every week that they have perfect attendance, they get a prize. And then they have a tracker for the whole year, so we can look back at like what was your absences last month compared to this month, and then resetting goals. And then attendance ambassadors. So we had some staff members who weren't putting their attendance in on time, or they weren't doing it correctly. And so we gave our 5th graders a leadership role. Every day at 1 o'clock, they're going around and they're rechecking the attendance. Number one, so we can make sure it's correct, just for liability reasons, and also we're having an attendance issue, so you want to make sure that your attendance is correct. and then just keeping people up on their toes and doing what they need to do. And then who better to do it but having your kiddos come in and do a leadership role and have them do it. Crocheting conversation. So my intern is actually facilitating this, which I love because I had a vision for the kids to learn how to crochet. And then whenever I was interviewing my intern, they were like, "Oh, I know how to crochet," and I was like, "I'm perfect. This is what I'm gonna have you do." So crocheting conversations, they're learning the skill of crocheting, which anybody who crochets or knits or does that, it takes a lot of life skills and it takes a lot of patience to be able to do. And so the kids are learning those life skills. They're learning how to crochet. They're learning that patience. Whenever they get frustrated, that you can get frustrated, but you're learning a new skill and you'll be able to do it. And then also like their coping skills, like they're breathing through it whenever they get frustrated. But the point is you can do hard things. And then they have a conversation piece. So just what's happening as a fifth grader, what's happening in your life, and then also just social emotional learning things as well. Monarch MC, these kiddos help out in the morning with Principal Smith doing the morning announcements, another leadership role. Feed More, we partner with Feed More, where we have food bags that are given every weekend. So we have 60 kids on that list, and 50 of them receive bags every week. And then anybody from the main list, it goes to the waitlisted kids. So you can imagine that for the waitlisted kids, that support is pretty inconsistent. But for some of them, they do get it weekly because some of our other kids are absent. So it's kind of like a catch-22. Some of the waitlisted kids are getting in, but that means other students are absent. Our community closet, so again, we have some kiddos who have accidents or they have a clothing insecurity, and so we have a community closet to supplement that. Thank you to you all who have supported that. Literally, kids are coming in every single day needing something. And then our food pantry, again, that passes beautifully organized for any families who need any food. And I'll get into that later on why families need that supplement. So some of them do have food stamps or they have some type of assistance, but sometimes it runs out, or if they have multiple children, the food is running out more quickly. And so this is a supplement where they might need it. Or some of our families who live in public housing don't necessarily have benefits, and so they do need support with supplementing that. Any questions there? No? Get my water real quick. All right, so meeting Henry L. Marsh. So this is Mr. Henry L. Marsh III. He was a civil rights lawyer and a politician. He was elected by the city council as the first African-American mayor of Richmond in 1977. And he served on the Senate of Virginia from 1991 to 2014. And he attended George Mason Elementary School. He is. He is. So we've done several things in the school to honor him, and he hasn't necessarily been there because of his health, but he is, thankfully, God willing, he is still here with us. But we get to see his daughter sometimes and some other family members. Has anyone met Mr. Marsh? Oh, really? Nice, nice, beautiful. I've never met him. I hope to meet him pretty soon. But yeah. So what's in a name? George Mason to Henry L. Marsh Elementary School. The school was previously named after George Mason, a founding father and a slave owner from Northern Virginia. Why that's problematic, for obvious reasons, is that majority of our students, almost 100%, are Black and brown students, and so having a school named after someone who was a slave owner, we wanted to move away from that and have someone who's more representative of the demographic. So the school's new namesake, Henry L. Marsh III, was given. Senator Marsh was born in the East End, raised in the East End, and is still in the East End and making an impact in the East End. And he also attended George Mason Elementary as a child, and so it's very fitting and appropriate to name it after him. Any questions? Anything anyone want to say who has met Mr. Marsh about him at all? Any stories? Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that. Any questions or anything thus far? All right, so we are a Title I school, and this provides, this was amended by Every Student Succeeds Act as a law to impact students in basic programming for low-income schools. And so the purpose is to provide them with equal opportunity. So some of the examples of what the money is used for are family engagement nights, hiring of support staff, tutors and interventionists, and a proposal must be submitted to receive funds. So even though we have Title I funding, we leave on partners and volunteers to kind of supplement what we're unable to get through these funding. And again, it's not always guaranteed. So you might put a proposal in for something and you might be rejected for that proposal. So we lean on our partners to kind of supplement and come in. That picture all the way to the left, that's an old picture during the pandemic. We would always go out into the community, do attendance initiatives, just connect with the families. To be a part of this work is to be very immersed into the community with the students and families. So that's myself all the way on the left. Our former principal, Mrs. Cook, our former school counselor, Ms. Battle, and then Duron Battle, who's now Dr. Battle as of last week. He was our family liaison, and so again, we just go out and connect with the community. And this was in Wickham. All right, so the meat and potatoes here. So Henry L. Marsh III Elementary School is located in the east end of Richmond. And so we serve two of the largest housing communities, Wickham and Mosby. So you see the cursor. So Mosby is up here. Henry Marsh is over here in the Churchill area. And then Wickham is right above Mosby. So one of the barriers that we face in terms of transportation and access is that quite a few of our students live in Wickham. And so if they miss the bus, the walk from Wickham to Henry L. Marsh III is about 47, 48 minutes. And so you imagine if it's raining or if my parents at work right now, I'm not coming to school. And then Mosby is about, and then from Wickham is about 30 minutes or so, but it's only an 8-minute drive. And then Mosby, about 27-minute walk, 27 minutes on the bus, and then to drive there is about 7 or 8 minutes. So top of Mosby, if anybody's familiar with the MLK, with MLK, top of Mosby is on the back of MLK, and the bottom of Mosby is in the front of MLK. So the front is closest to the school. And then in here, again, you all are gonna get the slides, and I have an RPS zoning map, so you can see where everybody's zoned. So the elementary schools are Henry Marsh Elementary, Chimborazo, Woodville, Fairfield, and Bellevue. So again, Henry Marsh serves Mosby and Wickham, and then Fairfield Elementary, there's a small section of Wickham that's zoned for Fairfield, and a small section of Mosby that's zoned for Woodville. And Chimborazo and Bellevue do not serve any of the housing communities. So between myself, Henry Marsh, Woodville, and Fairfield, we serve all the housing communities. And so just the barriers that we face there with everything in the community, and we're going to get into that. Chimborazo and Bellevue don't face those same challenges. They do face challenges within their community, but in terms of housing, the housing communities, it's not the same. And then our feeder schools, so all of those children, all 5 of the elementary schools feed into MLK Middle School and Armstrong High School. So on the elementary school level, we don't see this as much, where some of the communities have challenges with each other. So if you're from Wickham, you might have challenges with Creighton just because of the history that has been there and the violence that has been there. And so sometimes what happens is when everybody's blended, there can be wars there, and a lot of just violence that can happen. And again, on the elementary school level, we don't see that as much. Some of the 4th and 5th graders would talk about it sometimes, but in terms of like being violent toward each other, we don't see it as much because they're from Wickham or they're from and then Armstrong High School is that's our high school. So the 4 public housing communities are concentrated, that are concentrated within the East End are Wickham, so again right here, Mosby, Fairfield on this side, and Creighton Court. So there's an article that's hyperlinked in here where you see public housing communities. It's a beautiful article that talks about like redlining and history and how we're still seeing the impacts of that today. And then it goes on, it talks about a lot, so I'm gonna leave that in there, and you all can feel free to go on. I totally recommend that you read that. But the 4, again, are Wickham, Mosby, Fairfield, and Creighton Court. The plan right now is to eliminate all of the public housing communities in the East End and replace them with mixed income housing. And I'm going to be showing a video soon of the history of that, and actually Blackwell, how they tried to do this, and then kind of just looking back at history and what might happen now. Any questions? Okay. The median household income, I can't see that far. Within this article, I just highlighted a few things. The median household income in 2018 for Richmond was $45,117, while the census tracts that encompass Fairfield Court, Mosby Court, and Creighton Court in the East End had a median household income of $11,625 to $15,126. Could we just sit with that for a second? Could you imagine living off of that? I could not. While Black people make up 47.5% of the population, in Richmond they represent 60.5% of the people living in poverty. Yes, ma'am. No, you're fine. Yeah, and I'm going to talk about that. So it varies. So even if you're living in public housing, one of the myths that people think are like, oh, their rent is like $50. It's depending on your income. So some people might be paying a low amount and some might be like $650, $800. It really depends on your income and then what other benefits that you have as well, but it varies. Yeah. Any other questions? And then one other point that was made in the article, food deserts exist when residents have to travel more than a mile to have access to healthy foods. Prior to the market at 25th, a lot of residents in the community would get their food from local gas stations. This is still true. If you do a quick Google search of markets in the East End, you're gonna get like mini markets. Anybody who's familiar with New York, I'm from New York. I was joking earlier that I'm from New York with the boroughs, don't claim us because I'm from Long Island. But if you're familiar with bodegas, it's almost like a bodega where you can like go and get some toilet paper and whatnot, a quick meal, but it's not like a full grocery store. Market at 25th supplemented that, but to be completely honest, Market at 25th is pretty expensive. So even me, whenever I'm shopping for families, I don't go to Market 25th. I'd rather just spend my gas and go up to the Walmart up the street because it's pretty expensive and you'll get cheaper prices somewhere else. So even though we're not considered a food desert anymore because Market at 25th is there, it's still expensive for a lot of families, so they don't actually use it. And they're still using those mini markets that are within the community or the gas stations. Any questions there? And then the systems that were built here in Richmond, this is another quote from here, the systems that were built here in Richmond were systematically segregating the city. So again, with the redlining and everything, we're still seeing the impacts of that and just systemically the barriers that are facing the East End of Richmond. Okay, so here's where we're going to try to watch some clips. So with this, I want to show Richmond through the lens of the community. I get a great insight into the families' lives, but it's not my story to necessarily tell. And so I want you all to be able to hear from people who actually live in the community and what they're experiencing. I did not record this myself, someone else did. So Inside Richmond, the documentary, this is like the raw and real, just somebody from Richmond went out interviewing people. The way, because it was homemade, it's a little choppy, so I'm gonna be skipping through and I kind of blended it. And then, so I'm leaving this in here for your reference if you ever wanna watch it. And then the Heard documentary right under, that was published through PBIS, so that's more, like they had a whole production and everything, but it speaks to the same thing. And then this picture is some of the kiddos in Wickham. I don't know about you all, but when I was younger, we definitely would pop the fire hydrant and play in it. And so that's what they were doing there. But the police actually took this, so I think that it was okay at the moment. So we are going to try this. Is Brooke in the room, just in case we have any technical difficulties? All right, let's see. Okay, I'm hoping it plays.
Like these.
And if it doesn't play, then I'll just continue on and kind of hit some points of what the videos were about, and then I'll just leave them on here for your reference.
After.
Okay, I don't think it's going to.
really crazy.
Okay, yeah, so it's not gonna play. So I'm just gonna speak to a few things in here. Let me get back. All right, so again, it was a production from somebody who actually lives in the housing community, just going out and interviewing people. One part of it, they were talking about the history of segregation and how it's pretty intentional back in the day and how we're still seeing the impacts of that today. And then another point that I was going to point out, so stopping the violence and why it continues. So one thing, even myself, that I've always questioned is the violence and why doesn't it just stop? And so especially with the housing communities, like whether you're from Mosley or Creighton, you're essentially living the same life. You just have a different zip code. And so why do people fight each other over different zip codes? And what it boils down to is their sense of ownership and their family. So whenever you live in Mosley, even though there's a lot of chaos and violence that's happening, you form a bond with people and you feel like that's your family and your community. So if somebody comes and harms them, kills them, murders them, then you're going to retaliate. And that's what's oftentimes happening with the family, or the students specifically, the children, and their parents as well, that there's a beef there, what they call it, that they're retaliating against each other because they harmed their people. And they're trying to protect what's there. And so even on the outside, you feel like it doesn't make any sense to stop. It runs very deep for them, and it's very serious to them, and that's why the violence continues. And so the man, he was saying that he used to be one of those kids, and he doesn't judge them. He understands where it comes from. And so shifting the mindset can shift a lot of this, but right now it's a lot of pain, it's a lot of hurt, and people are operating out of that pain and hurt, and that's why the violence continues, unfortunately. Any questions about that? And then displacement of Blackwell. I really wish that one played, because the person was talking about how the mixed income, remember earlier we talked about the redevelopment of Creighton and how they're going to be getting rid of all the East End housing communities. Well, Creighton has started first and the redevelopment has already started there, so half of Creighton is already gone. What they talked about with Blackwell is they did the same exact thing with Blackwell, and all they did was just move a bunch of people from the housing community and displace them everywhere. And so the same needs still need to be met. And so my question is history going to repeat itself whenever they redevelop the East End? Is what happened to Blackwell going to happen in the East End? Again, when we're talking about the violence and mixing of communities, whenever people move out of the East End, they're going to go to other places. So for example, people moving from Blackwell, they ended up in Southside, or they ended up in other places. There's issues there. And so violence occurs when that happens. And so what's going to happen from a violence perspective? What's going to happen from a basic needs perspective? What's going to happen to these families once they go into other housing communities? And are their needs going to be able to be met, and what's the access there? And then another video was a single mom in Wickham. Literally, as they were filming, right before they filmed, there was a shooting in front of the apartment complex. And so they were interviewing on the back. And she was saying, like, her challenges as a single mom, like, there's this belief sometimes that, like, the parents don't care and it's on the parents. And yes, it is on the parents. However, we have some parents who are deeply trying to keep their kids out of these situations. And so she was talking about how she put her kids in sports and she's trying really hard to keep them on the right path. But at the end of the day, they live in these communities and they're going to be a part of what's happening, especially with our adolescents and getting into peer pressure and everything. There's a lot that happens there. And so you can try all you can as a parent, but you don't know what's going to necessarily happen. And it's not always as easy as just moving and getting your kids out. It's based on if they're able to do that or not. So it's not that easy. Any questions about that? Thank you for bringing that up. So in the video, they were talking about Blackwell and how that was the purpose behind it, where we're going to keep some units for affordable housing and as we're bringing other people in. And what ended up happening was people weren't able to afford it. So they called it mixed income housing or affordable housing, but it ended up being at market rate, or the affordable housing people actually couldn't afford. So right now, we were trying to get in contact with RHA, myself personally and another staff member. We couldn't get a hold of them, so we started randomly calling families from Mosby with them to kind of see like what they've been told and where they are. And it was a mixture. Some people have said they have no clue what's going on, they haven't been told anything. They thought this isn't happening until years later. Some people have said that they've been given vouchers to go somewhere else, and some people have said that they're on a wait list to be guaranteed spots to be in the new complexes that are going to go up. But again, and I wish it played, but in Blackwell they were just saying how yes, that was the idea, but it didn't end up happening that way. And so that is still the idea behind the East End, but we'll see how it kind of plays out. I'm not. You share. Okay. 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 Right. Yeah, I definitely will. Thank you so much for sharing that. And to your point, it matters who is running these things and who's developing the plans and implementing them, because that's going to make all of the difference. I'm definitely going to check that out. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, ma'am.
Court, the one along that road.
Yes, across from the cemetery.
All right, so everybody there was relocated.
Yeah.
At
So
that level,
right. Yeah.
all that.
So right now, half of Creighton is gone. I do believe there are some houses still there because some of them are still going. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But for the most part, all of those that were in the area, they were relocated.
Yes.
Because what's going up, I mean, as somebody who's there every week, is very slow.
Yes.
I mean, incredibly,
Yes.
incredibly slow.
Yes.
Although there's been all of that construction as I cut through the Connecticut
Yeah.
school in that Armstrong Renaissance area.
Yeah.
That all
Yes.
that's not.
Yes. I mean, in Manchester, how many of you have been in Manchester recently? Like, they're building on top of each other everywhere. And then even in the East End, when I was coming from Woodville, because I connect with Woodville a lot, there's an old church that they're going to be turning into apartment building. So we'll see how quickly they do that. But the operation has been pretty slow. And then the communication with the families, it's mixed on how much they're receiving and what this process has been for them necessarily. Yes, ma'am.
They also have mixed age,
Okay.
so they have seniors, retired people, who work there with younger people. They also
Oh,
have
beautiful.
lots right on the campus.
Okay.
So, or adjacent to it, so kids in the afternoon have programs that they can go to.
Okay.
So it's, you know, it just covers that.
I love that. Can you remind me what it's called?
Yeah, it's Winchester.
Manchester.
What's the name of the Winchester Group?
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. I'm gonna check that out.
Alani got updated.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, I can go to RHA and be like, can you check out Winchester Green? So we can get some of that.
Winchester Green is better housing for.
Okay.
And they are also a big portion of the starting to provide housing.
Right.
And the church is like, so the campaign is not possible, that is in fact doing that work.
Okay.
And I wish I could hope. It may be.
So if it comes to you, let me know. Thank you all for that. Any questions or any other comments or anything that you all know a different perspective on any of it? Okey doke. So with the mom, when she was talking about the shooting that happened in front of the house, the interviewer was asking her, like, what's your instinct whenever that happens? Like, do you all automatically hit the floor? Like, what do you do? And she said, yes, we automatically hit the floor. Even my 3-year-old knows to hit the floor. And so speaking about just the trauma that's there and the fight or flight and this idea of advanced maturity where even though kids who are in this position, they are kind of forced to grow up in a way, but they're not given the tools to be able to cope with the situation. So in school, one of the barriers that we're facing or the challenges that we're having are kids being extremely emotionally dysregulated. And even though to an extent developmentally appropriate at this age is heightened because of the trauma and the fight or flight that they're experiencing. And so there's a lot of support needed around that, and we have support within the school, but it's a lot going on. And you can imagine, like, if I didn't eat last night, or if my house is constantly being shot up and I have to come to school the next day and sit in front of this history lesson that's not exactly applicable to me, I'm not paying attention. I'm not there. I'm in fight or flight all the time. And not just them, but their families and some of the staff who live in the community. It's like, it's consistently something going on, and so some more support surrounding like mental health. And then another point the man was making was, does the welfare system do more harm and good? And then he was talking about the systemic barrier in the catch-22, that if you receive benefits or you in public housing, again, it's income based. And so sometimes people are deciding whether or not they're going to work, because if you work and you make too much, you can't get benefits. If you're also working, your rent is going to increase. So I pay $250, and now because you know that I'm working, my rent's going to go up to $800, but I'm still dealing with the roach infestation that I've told you 1,000 times to come correct, and you didn't come and fix it, but you want me to pay this. And so one of the families actually talked about that like RHA, and this is no shade to RHA, but they want their money on time, but they're not fixing the things that the community is asking them to fix. And I've even been out into the community sitting with a parent who is like trying to talk to them, trying to get things fixed multiple times, and it was just kind of like brush under the rug. And so this is some of the things that the families are facing. Question? And then he was also speaking about the bias of exactly what I just talked about, that whenever you're thinking about working and your benefits might cut off, like having to make that decision. So some people might think, well, why aren't they just working? Well, sometimes you have to make that decision on whether I'm going to work or not. And sometimes going to work at McDonald's is not going to supplement me taking care of my kids. So I stay on my benefit. And that just keeps people in the system and keeps the cycle repeating. Through the lens of the children. So every year CIS does a Moving On, so we nominate some students who have faced some challenges and they are doing well now, or they've overcome those challenges in some way. So I put these on here. So my Kwan is actually a student. Those of you who are familiar with Louie Glasgow, she's the volunteer coordinator now. She was a site coordinator before, and she had a student, my Kwan. And then David Bowman is a student who actually came from Henry Marsh. I was not going to play that because I would have been in here in tears because I'm personally connected to that family. Well, not personally, but I was his site coordinator at the time, and he ended up in foster care. And there was a lot going on, a lot of children in the house, a lot of pain. And so I encourage you to check out both of those if you can. I know I'm down to like 5 minutes, so I'm gonna go through this quickly. So some of the barriers and challenges that we face on a student perspective, and then some from the family as well. So housing, so the affordability, like I discussed, the safety and health concerns. So again, the infestations, untreated water leaks, asking for things and not getting them treated. And I will say that I imagine that RHA is also like overwhelmed with everything going on, and sometimes they can't come in and help. Basic needs, choosing between bills and basic needs. So sometimes we will have children literally coming in with holes in their shoes because their parent had to make the decision that I have to pay this bill before I am able to get you shoes, or they're planning out things, even with their clothes, holes in their clothes. And that's not all children. Some of our families have access and they're able to get these things, but sometimes it's making those hard decisions. Children having to fend for themselves, so parents are working or their kids are taking care of other siblings. Lack of life skills, so not knowing how to wash clothes or upkeep household. We've seen an uptick in our families needing to use the washer and dryers that's at the school, and kids needing to shower at the school as well. So thankfully they feel more comfortable in coming and saying that they need this, that this is something that's been happening. And then literally like teaching kids how to wash clothes. Like I've sat at a sink with them and took some like donated clothes, and we've practiced like washing clothes, bringing them out, because sometimes that's not being taught, or sometimes the parents are so overwhelmed and they might just be doing it themselves and not like teaching their kids along the way. And so that's something that we've been trying to supplement. Job opportunities, so choosing between benefits and jobs. Sometimes those jobs don't pay enough. Working several jobs to upkeep the household, so we can imagine if I'm a mom, especially a single mom, I'm working all these jobs, and then I have my kids to take care of, but some of those kids might be taking care of each other because I'm just trying to upkeep the household, and then also myself as well. Mental health challenges, that goes right into it. Imagine a single mom or a single dad, because they're single dads out here trying to do the same things, and the mental health challenges that they face. And then there's still some stigma in the community surrounding therapy, and then distrust in therapists and doctors, especially because there's also this stigma around CPS, and that if I go tell my business, they're going to take my kids from me. And that's not always true. And so trying to bridge that gap. But then there's also, back to the point earlier, about it depends on who you're sitting in front of. Are they actually wanting to help you, or are they following the book? Because in this field, you can't always follow the book. Like, it's very much hard work, and looking at families for who they are and what the situation is. And then access to medical services, affordability for treatment, transportation for students. So there's currently a bus driver strike, and buses are used for all levels, elementary, middle school, and high school. We've also seen this impact field trips, where sometimes we're not able to get buses for field trips. Henry Marsh hasn't specifically, but there have been some other schools that this has been a challenge. And so there's inconsistency with the time that they're getting there. And so sometimes if kids have been standing out there, they think that they missed the bus and they'll just go home. Or if they're waiting too long, they'll go home as well. And then they're missing school that day, especially like our Wickham kids or the top of Mosby kids. Any questions there? So some ways to support and be involved. So areas of focus: policy, education, opportunity, and connection. So using your voice in spaces is where it matters the most. If you have the opportunity to sit at tables where policies are being made, or just using your voice there. And then providing opportunities for students and families. So workforce, trade, education, supporting student exposure for field trips, supporting family engagement events, etc. Connecting with students and families during family engagement events, and volunteering. Like, your time matters the most. Your connection with the students and families matters the most. And then volunteering, not only at the school, but also local organizations. And here's some organizations that I put on there. So Robinson Theater's right up the street from us. They do some incredible things. I won't go through them all, but there's some pretty great ones here. And you all will have access to the slides. So if there's any that you know of that aren't included on here, please feel free to add this in here. Something I found out recently is RHA in Wickham, they have a STEM lab that they put in there. So I'm interested to see kind of what comes out of that, especially with the redevelopment and everything, what the plan is for that. And then at the way bottom, our CIS at HMES volunteer interest form if you're interested in any opportunities there. And these are some of the current Henry Marsh supports. So we have a lot of support in the building, but again, we each have caseloads. There's such a high need, so there's always room for more support or areas needed. But I did put some of the supports that we have in the contact information. So we had a partner recently who collaborated with the RBHA trauma therapist. They're doing a grief group, and they supported some materials because they don't have a budget. And so they supported some materials for the grief group that they were having. And again, not all support has to be financial. It can be giving your time or just being aware of things that are happening in the community and using your voice when you are in these spaces of like, this is what I know is going on, or being interested in hearing from the community and being immersed as well. And then our first Presbyterian Impact. I cannot do this presentation and stand up here and talking to you all without giving kudos and thank you to everything that you all have done for Henry L. Marsh and the community in general over the past 20 years. And first of all, can we just give a hand clap for over 20 years of being a part? So thank you all so much. And here's a few high impact supports. So the washer and dryer donation. So again, this has been incredibly helpful. I actually had a parent about a month ago come and wash clothes, and they were helping me with things during the day. We had, actually the Henry Marsh painting unveiling. So they helped me cut out like stars and whatnot for the unveiling. So as they were doing what they needed to do, they were being helpful to the school as well. And this has significantly alleviated the barrier for some of our families. The food pantry funding, and then Reading Buddy classroom assistants, all the volunteers coming in and connecting with our students. Again, they get so excited to see their person, to know that they're coming, to know that somebody's going to be there. Again, some of our families are working, so they don't get that one-on-one time all the time with their kids. So having somebody come and be consistent means the world to our babies and the staff, honestly. And then relationship building and community engagement. So not only with the students, but also with the staff and other community partners, how you all just like engage with everybody. And it's literally like community in school. And then genuinely caring, like First Presbyterian will ask, like, what do you need? You all don't just drop off things. It's like, I assume that they need some school supplies, so I'm just going to drop off some school supplies. I love that you all and really appreciate that you all are genuinely caring and genuinely want to know, like, what's the need and how can we be impactful and helpful. And so thank you for that very much. And then here's just some further reading. So there was a food justice program, so Feed the Culture. They had an article that they did. Was more than an article. It looked like a whole dissertation on food access, not just for the East End, but the Richmond community in general. The East End Transformation Plan for like Creighton and everything. RJ website, they have some things on there. And then the other documentary, they have a discussion guide that goes with it. Okay.
I hate to interrupt.
No, it's fine. I was done.
You send me the slides,
Yeah.
the deck, and I will forward it and share it with everybody.
Sounds good. That was actually it.
Have all the links in it for everybody.
Thank y'all so much. I appreciate it.